Have you ever thought about the fact that the century we are living in could be the most important century of all humanity? No, I'm not talking about science fiction, not about the fortune cookie that tells us that now is the only time that matters. Maybe they're right, but that's not the point. Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Luca and this is School of Thinking, the channel for learning how to think better. The idea that we live in the most important century in history has been formulated by Karnofsky, founder of the organization Open Philanthropy, and among the most important thinkers in the effective altruism movement. According to Karnofsky, the coming decades could decide the history not only of our civilization, of humankind or the entire planet, but even of the entire galaxy. This most important century theory is based on 5 theses, all of which revolve around the idea that certain technological innovations are capable of changing everything. Let's look at them together. Many people find it wild to say that we live in the most important century in history. But Karnofsky's first thesis tells us precisely that we are living in a wild time, and that we should be ready for anything. If we said that thanks to artificial intelligence we could expand throughout the galaxy, the common reaction will be disbelief and skepticism. And it could also be argued that fundamental innovations that will enable our expansion into the rest of the galaxy will come in 500, 1,000 or even 100,000 years. But even if the expansion of humanity across the entire galaxy were to begin in 100,000 years, that still means we are living in an extraordinary era when compared to the entire history of life on the planet. In fact, 100,000 years seems like a long time, but it is only a tiny sliver of time in the grand scheme of things. This alone is extraordinary, but we could argue that even today we live in a unique century. Sometimes it doesn't seem to us that anything special is going on, because for as long as any of us have been alive, the world economy has grown by a small percentage per year. However, if we put things in perspective, we can realize that we are living in the fastest growing economic period in history. The last million years, which include the beginning of our species, have been more eventful than the previous several billion years. The last 100 years have been more eventful than the previous several million. If we are able to produce a technology that can accelerate progress, as artificial intelligence could be, the next few decades could be the most eventful of all. In short, given the really wild times we live in, it makes sense to be open to possible ways in which the world could change rapidly and radically. Karnofsky's second thesis is that the long-term future is radically unknown. Some technological advancement could, in fact, lead to the emergence of a long-lasting civilization scattered throughout the galaxy that could be a utopia, a dystopia, or anything in between. To explain what he means by this thesis, Karnofsky urges us to imagine a technology that might seem like science fiction to us, but that could be developed in this century, that of digital people. What are digital people? They are fully conscious but made of software people who inhabit a virtual environment so that they can experience anything as if it were real. Such people can be copied, run at different speeds, and even reset. A world populated by digital people could be radically dystopian, in the case where there are virtual environments used to consolidate the absolute power of those who own them. But it can also be a utopian world, in case in such a world there is no more disease, poverty, and non-consensual violence, and in which it is possible to experience unimaginable forms of fun and creativity. In any case, the creation of such a technology could allow a civilization to spread throughout the galaxy and last a long time, as a digital person would not have the biological and temporal limitation of a flesh and blood person. Many people think that this kind of future civilization is either impossible or inevitable. The problem, however, is that almost no one bothers to discuss it in detail, since it all seems so far away as to be irrelevant. The third thesis tells us that this wild future could arrive much faster than we think because of a possible productivity explosion driven by artificial intelligence. According to some economic growth models, any technology that could fully automate innovation would increase society's ability to produce resources exponentially. This would occur because by automating innovation and resource production, we will have more resources, which will lead to more ideas and more innovation, which will lead to even more resources and therefore even more ideas and innovation, and so on. Such a technology could be a particular type of artificial intelligence, what Holder Karnofsky calls by the acronym PASTA, that stands for Process for Automating Scientific and Technological Advancement. What it means is a system capable of automating scientific and technological progress. This system will do the work of scientists and innovators at an extremely higher speed than flesh and blood humans, never tiring, reading thousands of articles at once, and immediately finding errors, inconsistencies, and developments that no one else will notice. Owning such a system could lead to a very rapid technological development, with exponential growth that is self-sustaining, shortening the time until we reach the long-term future we are trying to imagine. It also means, however, that if PASTA systems choose to pursue goals that are not compatible with those of humanity, things could very quickly lead us to some undesirable scenarios. The fourth thesis tells us that the PASTA system can be developed this century, making this period the beginning of a future galactic civilization. Thus, we can say that an artificial intelligence system like PASTA will be really important. However, a question arises. When will such a thing exist? Is this not just the dreams of science fiction enthusiasts? In recent years, this question has been approached from different angles. No artificial intelligence model to date has been able to achieve even 1% of the power of a human brain. This was because we had neither the engineering means to create something so powerful, nor a deep enough understanding of the way the human mind works. This is changing, however, and artificial intelligence models are improving faster and faster. It is therefore reasonable to think that by the end of this century, it will be possible to train AI models that are increasingly powerful, sophisticated, and capable of performing increasingly human tasks. It's no surprise that many experts on the subject argue that there is a good chance that a system like PASTA will be developed in this century. It is very difficult to make predictions on issues like that, as there are no precise metrics like, for example, those used when talking about climate change. Despite this difficulty, however, we should at least take seriously the assumptions underlying these scenarios. According to Karnofsky, we are not yet ready to handle the enormous impact we could have on the future. When we talk about being in the most important century, in fact, we don't just mean that we will create robots. We mean that we now have the opportunity to have an immense impact on a huge number of future people. To do so, however, we need to imagine useful action to positively influence the future. The problem is that many of the things we can do in this regard could also make things worse. A typical reaction when faced with these ideas is a mix of intensity, urgency, confusion, and hesitation. In this regard, Karnofsky invites us to not act in a hurry, as we may feel paralyzed and unable to think through such far-reaching issues. Rather, he invites us to do two things. First, he invites us to be more thoughtful and aware, giving these issues more importance and reflecting on them more seriously. Second, he also invites us to not rush into doing a single huge thing that can drastically change the future, because it could be crippling. Rather, he invites us to make a commitment today to making those small choices that we know will have a positive impact. Okay, we have come to the end of this journey through Karnofsky's thesis. So, what do you think? Are you also convinced that the 21st century is the most important century and that we are living in an exceptional era? Or do you think that this will be an anonymous and irrelevant century? Let us know in the comments and we'll see you in the next video.